Let's get into the Roto World player news. We talked a lot about Kyler Murray already. The Cardinals have informed him they're going to release him. I don't think we need to spend a ton of time, but from a fantasy angle, Jay, where would you want to see Kyler Murray next year? Because this is somebody a couple years ago was extremely relevant. He's become a totally forgotten man due to injury, and he's taken a step back in play. But at 28 years old, it's not like we're going to leave him for dead.
Yeah, that's the thing with Kyler is that he's 28 years old, and I think that he's become a little bit underrated, where I understand he hasn't lived up to the expectations of being a number one pick, as evidenced by that team is going to release him, and he hasn't really lived up to what he showed back when I think his peak season was probably 2021, where he's the MVP favorite halfway through the year, and Cliff Kingsbury was Coach of the Year favorite, and the Cardinals were in the 1 seed. It's been a steep fall since then, but I think Kyler, I thought 2 seasons ago, I thought it was perfectly fine. 21 passing touchdowns, 11 interceptions, over 7 yards per attempt. That was a perfectly good season at an average to slightly above average NFL starter level. And then this past season wasn't great, but at the same time, it was 5 games, and one of them was against Seattle. That was the game where he really struggled. So ultimately, I think that Kyler, I still think there is clearly some juice in the tank. Of all the available quarterbacks, I think that he is by far the most appealing in terms of where I would like to see him land from both a fantasy and NFL perspective. I think that Miami is interesting because of the weapons that they have, pairing him with Jalen Waddle and Devin Achane as a receiving threat and just going all in on speed again in that offense. But I mean, it's probably controversial. Everyone's just penciling in Daniel Jones back to the Colts. As a lifelong diehard Colts man, I'd rather have Kyler Murray than Daniel Jones coming off a torn Achilles. I think if you just want to look at taking a swing to be a team that has more upside to actually win the AFC, I'm not sure you're really getting there with Daniel Jones off of this injury. And the shine was already kind of coming off Daniel Jones before the injury in any case. So people don't throw the Colts into these kind of conversations the way that they do with the Vikings, who are always the go-to, or the Falcons or teams like that. But the Colts, I mean, with Daniel Jones at the helm, this was like greatest offense of all time for 2 months to start the season, statistically at least. And so I think that, you know, Kyler Murray behind that offensive line with Jonathan Taylor taking the load off in the backfield with the weapons they have, that is the destination to me that is the most appealing.
Yeah. You know what I would say there is, I think that makes a ton of sense. And I think Kyler Murray in a Shane Steichen offense, he'd know how to, you know, specifically use Kyler's skills. I think the challenge there is that Kyler, it's going to be similar to the Russell Wilson deal when he went to Pittsburgh, which is that Arizona is still on the hook for a massive amount of money. I think it's 26 something million. So Kyler's going to go somewhere and sign for like the minimum because he's still getting paid by Arizona. And so because he's Kyler Murray, because we expect Malik Willis to go off the board, in essence, he's going to be like a dirt who's likely the best available free agent quarterback. He's going to have his pick of teams. And I suspect that what him and his camp will want to do is go to it'll be a 1-year prove it deal. That'll be like just this, rookie, not rookie, but just league minimum because he's getting so much money from Arizona. And he'll go to the team where he has the best chance to start, to be the guy. And so I think if you're Kyler Murray and Minnesota's interested, you're like, I could go to Indianapolis, but they just franchise tag Daniel Jones. Whenever he gets back healthy, it's probably going to be him versus all I got to do is beat out JJ McCarthy. You know what I mean? And I got Justin Jefferson and, Jalen Naylor and Jordan Addison to throw to and TJ Hawkinson, and I get to play indoors on turf, so I think that's interesting. I'll also say for fantasy purposes, I'd be fine with the Jets. Again, Connor, they're going to be terrible, but for fantasy purposes, junk time still counts. Right. He's still got Garrett Wilson. He's still got Breece Hall, which we'll get to. They'll be running around. They'll be in, negative gain scripts all the time. Like, I think Kyler Murray would be a viable fantasy starter on the Jets just because of the nature of fantasy football in that team. He may not want to go there for a variety of reasons, but if you ask me, where do I want for fantasy? I think I think Minnesota, as somebody who has Kyler Murray in Dynasty, I prefer Minnesota or the Jets, teams where I think A, he can put up numbers, and B, he's going to be the starter, no question, for the majority of the year, if not the entire season.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.